And we're going to actually go after them and prosecute them with the partnership of PAM if we can, because what they're doing, we believe, is illegal.
And they may be prosecuted also for having given false reports on the attack in Iran.
Well, we have some fairly alarming but predictable breaking news. In the Trump administration's latest escalation in its aggressive war on free speech and free press, both Donald Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem repeatedly announced today that they intend to prosecute CNN for reporting the news. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, we've been covering the fact that the Trump administration is objectively the most censorious in modern American history. The legal director of the Libertarian Free Speech Advocacy Group, FIRE, this is a right-wing organization. They've repeatedly gone after Democrats and liberals in government and out of government on college campuses. Right-wingers love them. But they've acknowledged that the Trump administration's attack on free speech is unprecedented in scope, scale, and severity. That's a direct quote. They are objectively worse than any Democrat or any Democratic presidency by far. And we're only 6 months in. So I'm going to show you some clips from earlier today in which Donald Trump and Kristi Noem have repeatedly indicated they intend to prosecute CNN for reporting on news that they don't like.
And Madam Secretary, CNN yesterday pushed an app that lets you track where ICE agents are. Tom Homan was saying that perhaps CNN should be prosecuted for that as obstruction of law enforcement. Your response?
Yeah, we're working with the Department of Justice to see if we can prosecute them for that, because what they're doing is actively encouraging people to avoid law enforcement activities, operations, and we're going to actually go after them and prosecute them with the partnership of PAM if we can, because what they're doing, we believe, is illegal.
And they may be prosecuted also for having given false reports on the attack in Iran. They were given totally false reports. It was totally obliterated, and our people have to be celebrated, not come home and say, what do you mean we didn't hit the target? We hit the target prison. You know, the pilots came home and they said we hit the target prison. So they may be very well prosecuted for that.
So there you have it. Donald Trump, the sitting president, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who is a disgusting, despicable MAGA sycophant, wearing, by the way, MAGA merchandise in a government operation, a potential violation of the Hatch Act, although obviously the Trump Justice Department doesn't give a damn whatsoever, indicating that because they reported about an app which some suggest is being used to circumvent ICE, again, this is newsworthy whether you like it or not, that this is an endorsement of the ad. This is encouraging people to use the ad. And not only will they be prosecuted for that, according to Kristi Noem, but Trump says because they reported about a leaked intelligence report coming from the federal government indicating that Trump's strikes on Iran were not total obliteration, that because they hurt Trump's feelings, they might be prosecuted for that as well. And by the way, the person off camera speaking is right-wing moron and alternative media commentator Benny Johnson. What a lunatic and a loser. Here's another clip.
Because he's upholding the law and because a bunch of liberals, socialists, and Marxists are out there lying about what President Trump is doing. President Trump is upholding freedom by what he is doing. The freedom to live safely in this country and to do things legally and to have justice. And because those liberals, and I'm calling out you, CNN, I'm calling you out because you lie every single day about what these operations are. We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of this country because Joe Biden let the worst of the worst come in here. Since Trump.
So again, doubling down that CNN will be gone after and that they're calling CNN out because CNN reported the news. Mediaite reports this. Donald Trump and his Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem vowed to prosecute CNN over their recent reporting on a controversial ICE tracking app and the network's recent reporting on the U.S. strikes on Iran. Let's see. The CNN report on the ICE tracking app refers to the network's Monday coverage in which CNN's anchor John Berman introduced the app as, quote, controversial to say the least. Berman spoke with reporter Claire Duffy about her interview with the app's creator. So again, this is news coverage. They acknowledge that this is controversial, but it's newsworthy, right? Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, is also indicating that CNN should be investigated and prosecuted as well because they discussed this app and interviewed its creator. Now, as a Fox commentator, Leslie Marshall pointed out, this is just part and parcel of the Trump administration's hatred of the First Amendment, free speech, and free press, because Donald Trump has held those censorious views really since he entered politics.
Leslie, here you have the president saying a particular reporter should be fired, but does reporting on that damage report by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency denigrate, as Trump claims, the B-2 fighter pilots who bravely did their job?
No, no, not at all. We have the greatest military in the world. And, I was talking to, on my radio show, a fighter pilot, and he was laughing, and he goes, we're not wusses. Our feelings aren't hurt easily. Think about what they do. By the way, there were women fighter pilots as well. That
Yes.
kind of got me angry as a woman that, those boys, were hailed. Look, the bigger problem here is that the President of the United States seems to have complete disregard for our First Amendment of our Constitution with freedom of the press, and that freedom is to criticize the president. And to me, if you're president, you're going to get criticized. I mean, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that comes with the job. Shake it off. Have a thicker skin.
Exactly. That's the problem. President Biden was repeatedly criticized by Fox as well, and Fox reported on things that I'm sure that the Biden administration would prefer that they didn't. And yet, the Biden administration never attempted to prosecute Fox News or Newsmax or OAN or, anybody that I'm aware of for simply reporting news that they didn't like. Simply discussing this app doesn't mean that it's an endorsement of the app. They're not endorsing the app. They acknowledge that it is at a bare minimum controversial, but it's newsworthy, right? I also point out again, separate issue because it was a civil lawsuit, but Fox, since we're talking about CNN, and if you think the CNN is a liberal network in the pocket for Democrats, which I totally dispute, but let's just grant the premise, well, their counterparts in Fox had to pay the single biggest defamation settlement in American history, $787.5 million. And as I've said often and will repeatedly use as a counterfactual, by that logic, President Biden should have launched multiple investigations into Fox News for spreading defamatory election-related lies as a real threat to democracy. But that's not what happened, because Democrats in the Biden administration recognize that the awesome power of government should not be so easily used against networks that they don't like, the way that Trump and Kristi Noem are threatening to do here. I'm hoping CNN issues a public statement soon, but this is also not the first time that Donald Trump has attacked CNN in recent weeks. Leslie Marshall reported how Trump and Carolyn Levitt and others were calling for the firing of a specific CNN reporter who reported on the leaked U.S. intelligence report that the military strikes against Iran were not total obliteration. Again, that's newsworthy. It's not an endorsement of the report, but this is a U.S. intelligence report, low confidence, but an official report. Yeah, that's worth talking about, period. It would have been worth talking about if it happened under the Biden administration as well. They want to fire her for daring to report on it, as though it was an endorsement of what was in the report. Total conflation on this. But beyond that, and before Trump was calling for CNN to be prosecuted today, he was also lashing out at CNN host Abby Phillip. He says, where does CNN get its talent? Just watch someone named Abby Phillip lecture her audience on tariffs and the economy, which is doing record business. She has absolutely no idea what she's talking about, strictly third rate. Fortunately, the audience has long ago left CNN, and it will only get worse. Losers all. To which Abby Phillip responded, thank you for watching, Mr. President. Yeah, so listen, this is an awkward situation. CNN, I imagine any network, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, no matter what, hearing that the sitting president of the United States wants to prosecute you and hearing high-level cabinet officials repeatedly stress that they intend to work with the Justice Department to prosecute you in some way, shape, or form, that has to be quite chilling. And I imagine if the shoe were on the other foot, these elected Republicans, their allies, and right-wing media would feel very differently. And unfortunately, I think we're getting to the point that if there's no limiting principle among the Republicans and they feel empowered to just do what they do without any sort of consequence, we will get to a point where a Democrat will say, you know what, screw this, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and President AOC or President J.B. Pritzker or whoever it is might say, you know what, just to make the point, we're going to teach you a lesson by doing unto you what you all attempted to do unto others. So I don't know where this goes from here, but even the threat of it alone coming from the sitting president and the Homeland Security Secretary is totally chilling and should be universally condemned if you support free speech. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.